Hi guys, Bran here and welcome to another commentary video. Today, I wanted to give you a very wonderful piece of advice, a rule, if you will, that'll help you stay more consistent in terms of Dead by Daylight and in terms of reviewing yourself and seeing how well you're participating and playing in your matches, whether that be on the survivor end or the killer end of things. We do the match reviews that I record every single Monday on twitch.tv/TheMrHeadache if you want to come hang out, which helps people get more in depth with their own personal mistakes and how they can improve and what they can do better. But this little shorthand rule is a big macro thing that I see, go down in a lot of Dead by Daylight matches, which is something that I feel like a lot of people could improve on. So I came up with a rule that'll help you kind of keep track of this mid-game while you're actually playing and kind of shorthandedly review yourself without needing to get something a little bit more in depth. So let's go ahead and talk about the 3 segments rule. So to start off with talking about the 3 segments rule, it's important to understand that the game of Dead by Daylight, every single match, is broken down into 3 sections. I'm sure you've heard many different Dead by Daylight content creators refer to them, and many different Dead by Daylight content creators have a lot of different ideas about what that qualifies as. But for the purposes of our rule, I'm going to describe to you what we're going to refer to these as, and this is the early game, mid game, and end game. When we're talking about the early game, we're talking from the moment the match begins, so right off at 5 gens, till I'll say about 3.5 generators. So specifically that we're at 3 gens and there's partial progress on the map. So, the survivors have done some amount of generators across the map. There's some progress happening. That all the way up until like 3.5 gens I would consider to be the early game. Now, obviously, the next thing we're going to be talking about is going to be the mid game. So mid game is what I would consider to be 3.5 gens, so about 3.5 gens, all the way until all the generators are done. We're going to be calling that the mid game. I know a lot of people consider like end game also including like 1 gen left and that sort of thing, but I think for the purposes of what we're talking about, that doesn't really qualify, and we'll get into that. So we're going to be talking about the mid game as 3.5 gens till all gens finished. And finally, the end game is pretty simple, straightforward. It's all gens are done, everything before people actually getting to leave, all the survivors actually leaving, the hatch game, all of that is going to be what we consider the end game. Anything past all the gens being finished till the conclusion of the match. So what is the 3 segments rule and how does that apply to the 3 stages of the match that we just talked about? There is something that I've noticed in the very long time that I've played Dead by Daylight. I have 5.3k hours, so that is a very egregious amount of hours to have on anything, much less a video game. And one of the things I've always noticed, whether I'm playing myself, whether I'm watching streamers play, whether I'm watching friends play, is the 3 segments rule is that whoever happens to apply the most pressure, whoever happens to win 2/3 of the segments is usually the one that wins the game. So, for example, if you are on Survivor and you guys push out 2 gens really quickly, so we're talking about that early game, so the first 2.5 gens. If you push out 2 gens really quickly, the survivors have, in a sense, won the early game. So they have 1 on the board, right? 1 out of the 3. They have 1/3 of the game already won. That's 1 out of 3. Now let's say that the killer applies pressure and kind of, realizes he's being sweated on and kind of freaks out. He starts tunneling a bit. He starts proxy camping the hooks and he puts a lot of pressure. And by all the gens getting done, there's multiple people on death hook. That case, we would consider the killer has won the mid game. The killer has put a lot of pressure in the mid game. Has put a lot of people on death hook. The killer has quote unquote won the mid game. And so that would be 1 out of 3 for him. That'd be 1 out of 3 for the killer player. However, in the end game, despite having multiple people on death hook, they 99 the doors really well. They body block. Killer tries to slug and they like pick him up and they have buckle up or something like that. I know buckle up will probably get nerfed at some point, but it's in play. But essentially they play really well in the end game. So as a result, that would be 2/3 of the segments. So early game, mid game, and end game. The survivors won 2/3 of the segments, so they're the ones that are going to win. They're the ones that are going to have most of their team escape, but that's going to end like a 3 or a 4 out. But essentially the TLDR, if you're not understanding, is that whoever takes control 2 out of the 3 sections of any Dead by Daylight match are typically the ones that win this. It's not with like 100% certainty. It is possible for a killer to just build a full endgame build and just focus on applying all their pressure in the endgame, and they do a 4-man slug and they get it out. You know, that has happened before. But by and large, by most average matches of Dead by Daylight without like super specialized builds, usually whoever takes control over 2 out of the 3 segments of any game of Dead by Daylight are the ones who end up winning. If the killer ends up, you know, using lethal and applying a lot of pressure in the early game, like there's like 3 hooks before the first gen, and then they get all their pain res hooks in the mid game, like the survivors probably aren't coming back from that. Even if they have a really positive end game, even if they get 1/3 of the segments on the board, it probably doesn't matter. When a team, whether that be the survivor end of things or the killer end of things, apply so much pressure that they take control over 2 segments out of the 3 segments of any Dead by Daylight match, if they get that 2/3 control, they are probably the ones that are going to be ending up with the victory, whether that be a 3 or 4K or a 3 or 4 out. So what is the application of this? Because this is something that you probably may have noticed yourself, even if you didn't, like, you know, qualify in your head with these very specific terms, these very specific parts of the match. How do you apply this? What is the point of this? Well, like I said, this is a very good tool in order to like shorthandedly review yourself. If you're having a really bad match, whether that be as killer or survivor, you should be able to look back shorthandedly without having to, like, you know, watch the match from start to finish and go, where did I not apply a lot of pressure? Which segment of the match did I not win? Did I have a poor early game? Did I have a poor mid game? Did I have a poor end game? Did I win at least 2/3 of the 3 segments that are in a Dead by Daylight match? If the answer is no, oh, okay, I only won 1/3. I had a pretty good end game, but like it didn't really matter. Then you need to look at your early and mid game and see, like, how could I have performed better in my early and mid game? Or, hey, I actually had a really strong early game, but I fell off really hard and didn't really have a good mid game or end game. What happened there? Why did I fall off hard? What did I stop doing that was working really well for me in the early game that ended up, you know, coming back to bite me in the mid or end game? So essentially, it kind of shows you your points of your pain points. It's showing you, like, where are these flaws? Where are my weaknesses? Where in that match did things go wrong? It helps you very easily, like, zero in and see, like, where do I need to focus? Where do I need to kind of, like, analyze more and see where things went incorrect? So that is the 3 segments rule that I came up with for helping you track your own Dead by Daylight matches. Do you think this is going to be helpful for you, or is this something that you've kind of already been doing in your head shorthandedly? Let me know down in the comments below. But that's going to be it for today's video. But I do upload daily, so I will see you tomorrow. But if I do not, I will see you when I see you. Goodbye.